Being Thursday, August 24th, 2023, 5:15, I'd like to call the planning commission to order. Stand for the pledge of allegiance.
Pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America, and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
I'd like to get a motion to adopt the agenda.
I would make that motion.
I'll second it.
All in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
All opposed? Need a motion for approval for the July 27th, 2023 planning commission minutes.
I'll make that motion.
I think there was a couple spelling errors in there for like Grebno.
That hurt. I'll check. Just if you send me an email, maybe let me know what those are. I can
Yeah, this,
amend those. And yeah. All right. Did we get a second on that?
I'll second it.
All in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
All opposed?
Aye.
It is mine. All right. The first action item on the agenda is a discussion on a mural proposal by the Art Council at 515 West North Water Street. I had our media person kind of put this together. We did not get a mock-up from the art committee. So we basically, there's some windows that were boarded up on that side of the building. There is some decay on the wood, so their proposal is to remove that wood, clean up those openings. We'll check all the brickwork around it to make sure that's intact. And then they talked about putting a teal blue word explore in the 7 windows. So we did one with white background and the turquoise, and then turquoise background with the white. So this will be, could be a different font, could be a little different sizing, but just to give you an idea what they're proposing to put on those. So they'll be hiring a lift to get up there so they don't damage anything on that lower roof of the appliance store. So we're looking to get approval for this mural.
When we approve something like this, are we, I mean, I guess what I would like to see is the business owners that are being affected by that, like TV Appliance, whatever that building, whoever the owner is, that we get their approval of it. And I mean, or that they're aware that this work is being done before it's done, I guess is what I would like to see. And I don't know if that's in our ordinance or anything
It's
like
not.
that.
Currently, it's not.
When we redo those again, I think that's something that, because I feel like it kind of some responsibility for these, what happens if something happens to the TV Appliance building when they're doing those murals? I mean, who is then, because we are approving it, are we part of the liability of that? Or is it just strictly the Art League?
I don't think we're taking on any liability. You're just approving the mural itself.
Okay.
Means and methods for how it gets done, just like a contract.
Okay.
A contractor, the means and methods of how they do it, that's up to them. And I don't know if we want to regulate.
Well, I guess,
How much?
do the affected business owners, are they aware that these are being done? I think that even just that little bit of a sign off, that say, yep, we're aware and we're behind it and it's good to go.
I know the Art League has a form or document that they have the owner of the building sign. But in this case, like you're saying, we can most certainly go to the Art League and say, hey, as a friendly, FYI, why don't you have a conversation with going over their building and make sure that everything's on the up and up?
Right.
It's your liability
Mhm.
if something happens. And I've had that conversation with
Okay,
the art league already, that this is your liability. I wanted to make sure that if you are doing anything on behalf of this property owner for the Explore building, who's covering who if something
Right,
happens. And I
right.
specifically had that conversation with them. So
I guess that's what I would like in the future when we're approving these murals and stuff, that we have a little bit more to go on than just that. That it's not, I mean, I can see what it is. It's just that I would like to have a little bit more, that approvals, that the business owners are good to go with it, a little bit more.
We'd have to adjust our ordinance to cover that.
And then
but,
that's
As
something
it
that
is
we
right
should-
now, it's not required. so.
And then that's what we should do when we are doing those new ordinances, so.
and there shouldn't be too many buildings that they need to work with an adjacent property owner. Usually it's just that property that they're doing the mural on is that they're touching and affecting. This is obviously a little bit different situation because they have to go over the neighbor's property to get to
Well,
this facility.
They're gonna have to have permission to go over the neighbor's property anyway. They're not gonna be able to put that mural up.
They're
Your
gonna have
client's
to be
gonna have
on-
to be on board with them,
They're gonna have to be in the parking lot back here.
right? So I mean, that's what I'm trying to say, is no matter what, they're gonna have to be in compliance.
Yep. Some
'Cause they
approval on that
can't
point.
just put it up.
But from my understanding is that the Art League does have some documentation that the property owner that they're putting the signage on or the mural on, they have a document that the property owner signs to make sure they're aware. I don't know if you want to see that document every time they bring up a new mural. Is
I
that
just,
what you
if
want?
it's not part of our ordinance as it is
Currently, it's
now,
not.
I mean, I don't think we can ask them for that. I just think that our protection, the city's protection, just a kind of a few more things that we're looking at.
I
I
think
mean,
if you were approving the means and methods, regulating that, that'd be one thing. But if you're just approving the actual mural itself, however they do it, if they have a helicopter come in and paint on the side of the building, that's their
I
thing.
think about all we ever asked for was what was the mural.
Correct.
When it was
Right.
offensive or whatever
Right.
like that. That's about all we ever
Right.
asked for.
Just out of curiosity, is the Art League paying for all the supplies and the brickwork and all that stuff?
I think the owner of the building is. I know
Again,
there's been that discussion.
Not within our scope.
Right.
Your scope, do you like the mural itself? And are you approving the mural? Again, that means and methods, how they're doing it. Unless you want to get into that, but that's kind of beyond the scope right now. Chairman, if there's no other discussion, I would ask for a motion.
Anybody want to make a motion to approve? Doesn't sound like we do.
motion needs to come from the committee member.
Correct.
I'll make a motion.
Anybody want to second it?
Mayor Markle, second.
All in favor of the motion for the mural on 515 North Water Street? Signify by saying aye.
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 All opposed? Motion's carried.
All right, the next item on the agenda is the CSM for Pershing Avenue. 1702 and 1710 have a common boundary. might be the easiest CSM we ever do, but basically the line comes through at an angle. They're just proposing to have that line straightened out for the property owners. So they had a company provide us, was it Carroll? I don't recall who did the CSM, but anyway, they're gonna redraw the line there to split those properties a little more equitably, I guess. So it's basically a lot line adjustment is all we're looking to do.
Now, David, it's both these lines.
Yeah, which,
What was that other one? Yeah.
The angled one with the dashes is currently what it's, what it shows, and then they're proposing to just kind of make a 90-degree coming off Pershing to
What is it?
separate the two properties.
is it the
This
two
one too?
lines? Two
I don't
dotted
know,
lines.
is that one on that side's getting changed? I think it's just the one in the middle. I think they're just showing that there. They're all kind of designed that way on that whole block. So just these two owners must have got their heads together and decided that would make more sense to them to square that off.
But in this particular case, then this, if this owner doesn't want to straighten it out, then this line would not be accurate, correct? And
I don't
it's-
recall them telling me that that line was in question. It was the one between the two houses. I can verify that if necessary, but I don't think it's a stretch to prove this. And then I don't think that other line was in play on this, as I recall.
So then the dark black line does not count.
You'd have to have that homeowner also have the
Right.
unloaded this too.
Yep,
The
Yeah,
third
because
one.
otherwise,
There's only two right now.
Right,
I think only the two got their heads together and decided that line didn't work for them.
But it's kind of goofy. I ain't gonna lie. I'd want it straight too.
any more discussion on this?
So David, you're recommending to adjust the new CSM for this single?
Yep.
Boundary?
And I checked zoning, it wouldn't create any issues that would violate our zoning ordinance, so I would recommend approval.
so that other slanted line then is going to stay that way for now.
I believe so.
That's the case, I would recommend that whatever motion is that you stated as it's the lot line adjustment between this address and this address.
Okay, I'm looking for a motion to approve the lot line adjustment at 1710 Pershing Road and 1702 Pershing Road.
Make that motion.
I'll second it.
Second it, Jamie?
Jamie did. Motion's been made and seconded, looking for approval by the rest of the board. All in favor signify by saying aye.
I,
All opposed? Motion's carried.
Okay, next item on the agenda is a proposed ordinance change to allow chickens. So I guess we can just open that up for discussion. So I was tasked with putting together some ordinance language. Spent a fair amount of time this week, Nicole and I and Chad working on this, so just a draft form of the first draft for a chicken ordinance, so. Folks had a chance to go, we did get some comments from Jeff via email. And we'll obviously look at those if we decide to pursue this. Guess we can open it up for discussion.
I have a Word document up on the screen right now that we can easily, if you guys talk about changing something, we can just track changes and change it on the screen real easy, so we keep track of any adjustments that you guys what I want to see. I guess to get the ball rolling, I think two of the main points of discussion were if you're gonna allow it, how many chickens you're gonna allow, and then exactly what properties you're going to allow. So I guess just to get the ball rolling, right now we have in the draft, which taken for some prior input from previous meetings, because I think the mayor or somebody said that Tractor Supply sells them in groups of 4. So start with 4. I guess where do you guys want to go with that?
What are some of the other towns around here, Dave, that have the chicken ordinance? What's some of their, you had some of that information before, didn't you?
Just that the ones that I reached out to said they weren't having difficulties based on their chicken orders. They weren't receiving a lot of complaints, seemed to be going okay.
What was their number of chickens that they were allowing?
Well, I think the ordinance that I sort of used as a template for this, I want to say was 6 on Menashes.
Yeah, this is Menashes right here.
And I didn't check to see number wise what some of the other ones were doing. I know a couple of the ones were at 6. And then someone mentioned here that you can buy chicks in quantities of 4. So I think that's number they thought they might want to get started with. And
So past discussion, we had talked about that our other animal ordinances they allow 3 dogs, 3 cats, to keep chickens at 3, just to be consistent. And then the rebuttal to that is Tractor Supply, our local suppliers, sell them in bundles of 4. So in my belief, anybody that's going to start a little chicken farm here in town is going to start 4, and we're going to immediately have problems if we do anything different. We're creating an ordinance that would create problems if we do anything different than that number. That's just my take.
Can you explain what you mean by creating a problem if we do anything different than 3, because that's what we have for other animals? Or not going with 4 because of Tractor Supply, or both?
What I mean by that is if we create an ordinance that only allows 3 chickens, they're gonna go to Tractor Supply and buy 4. Now, immediately we have a problem. I don't know why that we would do that. The less inconveniences you have, the less of a problem.
You don't want to create an ordinance that you know they can't follow.
Right, that's what I was
it's
getting
just-
at, yeah.
You
No,
can't-
I don't disagree. I didn't understand because he had mentioned that there were 3 for cats and dogs, and now we're doing 4.
That was just previous discussion that is keeping things basic across the board. Which, I don't disagree with, but then you look at the other side of it, that the facilities that sell them are gonna sell them in 4-packs.
I think for simplicity, we just keep it at 4. I mean, because of that. It would be not consistent with our others, but I think for that reason, this could be made an exception as far as that 4.
So to keep that, I think one of the other points of discussion is where would you allow it? Had some previous discussion on just a two-family dwelling. How would that work if you allow it in that type of scenario? Now, Dave and I had a conversation that I wouldn't necessarily say R1 and R2 districts. I wouldn't restrict an R2 district, because if you look at our zoning map, a good portion of our community is zoned R2. So if you can tell this more orange color, that's an R2 district. This is an R1 district. So there's quite a few parcels that are in the R2 district with single family dwellings. Yeah. So So I wouldn't necessarily, say you can't do it in R2 because now you're gonna exclude quite a bit of the community. I would rather state that if you want to restrict it to a single family dwelling, you say it like that. It's restricted to a single family dwelling or a 2-family dwelling or when they're multi-family, 3 dwellings or more.
So if it's a 2-family residence, right? So we have a duplex and the owner is living in one side, I don't want to restrict what he can do on his own property. I think that you just leave that up to the owner of the property if he wants to allow chickens again. That's
So could
between
the
him and his
ordinance-
Renters, not between the city and the renters, right?
The only thing that might conflict if you have a, say you got a 2-unit, now you're gonna have trouble meeting the 20-foot separation from another habitable. I could see where that could be an issue, that you got chicken coop right up behind unit 1 and unit 2's, 5 feet away with their bedroom window. So I kept the R2 in there because the other ordinance had it, but I thought if we wanted to restrict it to not allow it on a duplex, that we would not restrict the zoning, but maybe restrict the use to single family homes.
I would think the yard would, if it can happen, let them happen as long as the landlord's okay with it.
And they might be able to meet the 20-foot anyway if they put it kind of halfway, down their side of the property. And still not be right outside the neighbor.
And if they can't meet the requirements, then legally they can't have it.
Right.
Right.
Simple as that. Let them regulate themselves on that.
Well, we have talked about a lot of times with multi-family dwellings and things that they just pick up and leave. And they leave a lot of the junk around, and it could be a chicken coop that we would have to dispose of. I mean, so I just think, again, simplicity, and we're just starting this out, to be a little more restrictive on it. And then that way we can alter it as an ordinance change if we find it. I mean, I think sometimes if we're a little loose on things, that's when we get all of these, variations that they're coming to us on things, that they want us to do something else with it. So I think if we are kind of strict with it to start out, I don't think there's anything wrong with that either.
What about it? What about it saying owner occupied dwellings? That way, if there's, a duplex and the owner is in one side, it's an owner occupied, or the home is owner occupied.
So then when the owner moves out, are we gonna require them to tear down their chicken coop? their next
Well,
door?
if they're
I
moving
just-
out.
I don't
they're-
understand, I don't understand the difference. If they can meet the ordinance to be away from buildings the way they need to be, who are we to tell a family living in an apartment or a duplex that they can't have chickens because they don't own their home? If the landlord's okay with it, we just gotta stop making rules that hinder people.
And Susie, you had brought up the multifamily dwellings and stuff, like moving out and leaving it there. Correct me if I'm wrong, but that falls back on landlord to clean up. the
It
property,
does.
correct?
It does, but a lot of times the landlord doesn't clean it up then either. I mean, we have eyesores around town. I mean, and
I have a question about the permits. When you get a permit, I was reading on this one site, it said, if you get a permit for a residence, if the people move, the permit stays with that property. Is that how it's gonna be?
We haven't got that far in this discussion yet, because there is some language that we have currently in there that talks about if you get your certificate revoked, that you can't re-up for it. And then we didn't really think through to think that, well, maybe someone else moves in right away and they want chickens, and now
yeah,
if it goes with the property, you wouldn't allow it. So we probably would have to tweak that part of it anyway. But permits normally go with the property. Doesn't go with the particular tenant, although, dog licensing and all that's based on the occupant. So
Dave, I'm looking at that section D up there and it says, other than a recorded title owner on a duplex. You know, people living together in a side by side have enough problems with their personalities and their other pets getting along. Would we need written permission from both renters to say, yeah, I don't care if the other one has chickens or not? What if one gets chickens and the other one don't like it and they're both paying the same rent? I hope it wouldn't be that way, but could it be that way? Probably. What do we do about that?
Or I take that one step further. Two different families renting a duplex. One gets the chickens, one is okay with it, signs off on it.
Yep.
One that signs off on it moves out, next one comes in, doesn't want that anymore.
Well,
They have it.
Then that's their choice not to move in there though. I guess that's pretty
They
easy.
know what they're getting into then.
Right.
Their choice.
Well, that goes out for everything. Like if I rented a duplex, I wouldn't say, well, the neighbor's got to sell their dog. Like, that's not a thing, right? So, I mean, if the
Right.
neighbor wants to buy a dog, he can buy a dog. He's renting that property. I'm renting this one. That has any bearing on, you know, what the rules should be there.
It's more on a personal level.
Right. If you're renting a duplex, yeah, if you're renting a
And it owns it,
duplex,
right?
that's,
The tenant
That's a
on the other
chance you would
side
take.
could always tell the landlord, I don't want it, you know, and let them hash it out. Have the
I mean,
owner
the city
decide.
shouldn't get involved in that, I don't think.
And the landlords can say they don't want it.
Yeah.
I mean, they don't have to allow it.
Right.
Rent them without allowing dogs.
Right.
Without allowing chickens.
Yeah, the tenant on side B doesn't like it, he can let the landlord know, and the landlord can decide whether or not he wants to pursue it or not.
I do have a question on the chicken coop. On there, it talks about size and everything. Do we currently have rules about a doghouse?
Not as far as I know. And this is probably language that they got either from the state or from some other ordinances where they have it, so. It's not something I came up with. Was it 3 or 4 square feet
I
per?
mean, now we're sending them out to do checks on chicken coops
Wow,
to make sure they hit.
that'd be part of the site
The
plan.
initial. site
It's gonna have to have
Mhm.
a minimum of, if it's 4 chickens, what is it, 16 square feet or something?
Where the chicken people are gonna come and say, where's your dog house plan?
I don't know.
Wouldn't it be smarter if we just, instead of sticking all the time and effort in revising this thing, put it out on a referendum and see what the public actually wants? Because we only got a handful of people that want chickens.
There's more that, I think if you did this,
I
If
think,
you
Well,
did this,
if you
a
put
lot
it
of
out
people
on
would get
a
chickens.
referendum and it was voted on,
That's why they voted for you. That's why the people of your district vote for
I
you
mean, yeah,
to be the same.
understand
What's
that.
going on here? We can't just put every questionable thing or everything that might not please everybody in the whole town to a referendum. I mean, they're voted for us to do this.
Ultimately, if it is passed and you have a site plan and we see the size of it, I mean, that's all we can go off of. We just gotta,
And obviously, we're not inventing the wheel here. It's been done in many
Right.
cities, so it's not. I think we're thinking too much into it, is what's happening.
Little bit.
I don't think with that line F, I don't think is too much to ask. I mean, what is it, three square feet per chicken? And pretty tight.
Yeah, no, I got no problems with that, you know, I just worry about like, the chicken people saying, where's your dog house picture? You know, like,
I mean, Jamie's got a point there because, I mean, what's the ordinance for leashing dogs, for having dogs contained? I know that the state ordinance is that your dogs must be under your control at all times. There's no state leash law. It's the dog must be under your control at all times. So even if it's on a leash and somebody gets bit, you did not have that dog under control. But your dog could be off a leash, and if it's completely controlled, you know, it's not going to bite somebody. So, you know, what's the city ordinance for the leash law kind of thing, the containment of pets. He's got a point. What's the containment rules for pets for the city?
I think we're getting too broad with things right now. We're supposed to be working on a chicken ordinance and we're worried about what a dog ordinance might be, so.
I think it's relevant to what Jamie is talking about. You've got, now we're imposing rules for this pet. What are our rules for other pets?
Chickens are housed different. Your dog doesn't sit up on a roost that needs a taller building. He goes in and lays down on wherever he feels comfortable at. He's not worried about getting away from predators or anything at night. That's why chicken houses are built different, and that's why you need an ordinance, so it's not sticking up above somebody's fence being an eyesore or something.
Not all dogs are
whole
housed
different-
inside.
Whole different ball game.
So I guess what we're looking at here is whether line F needs to stay or go.
I think it needs to stay. I mean, we have, like Jamie said, we're not reinventing the wheel. What other cities are doing. I mean,
Like you said, Jamie, the dog police come and start asking those questions, and we'll be right back here having that discussion again, maybe make an amendment.
I'll just bring it up because that's what I see, you know, like people are people.
Yeah, I
That's-
can't disagree with you.
I think we should have. Ordinance on how big a dog kennel is.
Yeah, you can put a doghouse right on the line if you want, right now. So. I mean, I could see that becoming an issue, but
I'm okay with line F. I don't see any. It's taking responsibility of taking care of an animal. Eyesore on somebody's fence. And it's 1 square foot or 3 square feet is a small box, but still large enough for a chicken. I think it's respectful. Any further discussion on that or should we roll on?
If we're gonna move on to the next one. Address this, here, Mark and I talked about this one. So in the Menasha ordinance, it talks about no slaughtering of chickens within the city limits. We had a discussion on what kind of bring this to your attention for discussion. Would you be okay with that when a chicken needs to expire? Are you okay with individual butchering, slaughtering the chicken for personal consumption? Obviously, we don't want to get a situation where we're getting into butchering to sell, so it's a business. That's not the intent. This is the intent of this whole thing. It's for personal use and personal consumption. We talked
Yeah.
about somebody can go deer hunting and bring in a deer and butcher it. They go turkey hunting, bring in a turkey to their house and they can butcher that.
Like, what am I gonna do with the chicken if he breaks a leg?
some chickens are raised for that. Like, that's what they're
That was
for.
my point, too. Not everybody's raising chickens for eggs or fat.
Go to the fair right now, all them kids raise them animals for that.
I personally think that we should allow.
It's no different, it's no different than cleaning fish.
Exactly, that's what we're saying.
No fish for you.
Oh, boy.
They're only slaughtering 4 at a time too.
Yeah, they can only have
They're only gonna be
4.
slaughtering 4 at a time. It's not like there's a chicken production.
Kinda
And then
like
you're
what
only
I-
gonna be able to do it 4 times a year probably anyway.
I told Chad is, people are gonna buy these chickens in the spring. And then they're gonna slaughter them in the fall. They don't wanna over the winter, they're gonna be useless in the winter time for them. That's what I see happen. And then in the spring, get some more chickens. And slaughter them in the fall.
Nothing wrong with that.
That's just what I understand when you talk about other people that are in other cities do it. That's what they do. I mean, So we're good with taking line E out?
No, I think we leave it in, but we added this personal consumption,
Oh, I see.
or unless we added this statement. The Menasha statement was no person may slaughter any chickens in the city, period. We added
Unless for person.
unless for personal.
Perfect.
consumption.
That's a good add.
Line F says no breeding of chickens. As long as you get a chicken egg, you can hatch it and raise it. Not breeding it, it's under my consumption, so we don't have any misleading agendas there. I mean, it already says we can't have roosters. We're not going to breed them.
Not going over the number that you can have.
Right.
Yeah, I think the whole intent of this is just for personal consumption.
Yep.
It's not for business, it's not for breeding, making money, it's not for sale of eggs, it's for personal consumption, which this is tailored towards that. Dave, was there anything else you want to point out? Otherwise, this was kind of the,
I don't know if this is necessarily ready to vote on. I do think if we're still leaning toward possible adoption, I don't know if we go as far as to get a consensus of the group here. But I think there's some tweaks we need to make, discussing the R2 language in there and a few other things to clean up. But a lot of times I'll ask for input via email on particular items of an ordinance that you might have a problem with. If I could get those, I could maybe have a clean draft ready for the next meeting to maybe even vote on.
How do you feel about enforcing of it? I mean, you're gonna be the one that's gonna be going out to check.
It'll
the
be a little
violations.
more work doing the site plan stuff. And like I said, I did reach out to some other communities. They said there isn't a lot of complaints and stuff to follow up on. I'm sure we'll get some. I'm not saying we would never get any because we will, just because we do on anything else, but I don't think it'll be a huge burden. Maybe initially getting the site plans in and getting permits approved for them would be a little work, but you know, if we were to adopt it, say in the next meeting or two, winter tends to be a little slower and maybe people that want to get started might start this fall yet. But seemed like we had a heat lamp on, if I recall, so there could be an issue with if we have to run electric out there that meets code, but we can deal with that over time. I don't think it'll be a big burden. I mean, it'll be some, obviously, just more work, but I don't think it's anything we can take care of.
Running an extension cord for a heat lamp, is that against code?
Pardon?
Running your 20-foot extension cord for a heat lamp, would that be against?
Yeah, I don't know if we'd necessarily allow that because now you could be in a wet condition.
Why not?
So-
We allow Christmas lights, all that kind of stuff.
Yeah,
Yeah,
same thing.
gotta have water for the chickens, you know, rain. I mean, I could see potential if they didn't have some DFI protection on that it could cause.
I don't see why we need to waste any more time on this. I mean, we got it pretty well laid out here. I don't know about
Is that
you
gonna
guys,
be-
What I see in front of me, I'm ready to vote on.
Gonna be 20 feet from the back and 20 feet from the side setback for the chicken coop.
To a occupied structure.
Right.
Yeah, you don't have to be, if your neighbor's house is clear on the other side of their lot, you could be 3 foot off the property line and still meet the 20-foot.
I hope my neighbor don't get any, that's pretty close to my bedroom.
Well, it'd have to be 20 foot from your occupied dwelling minimum.
It has to be 20 feet from your house, but not necessarily 20 feet from your garage. What he's saying. If you're-
Or 20 foot from a property line for that matter, because the other house could be 15 foot off the property line, then you'd have to have 5. 3 foot regardless. Side
And I
yard.
think, like you said in a prior meeting, that chickens themselves aren't very noisy at all. It's the roosters.
I would encourage everybody to go to Alpaca County Fair this week and go to the poultry barn. The only thing gonna be making any noise is the geese, maybe the ducks a little bit, and the roosters. Chickens. It can't be much worse than having a cat sometimes, seriously.
One other thing I'll point out that we did make a change from the Menasha one was the permit application timeline. We found out that the requirement for ATCP, for the state, to get your permit from the state or registration from the state is every 3 years. So we thought, well, instead of having people come in every year, why don't we just mimic the same timeline as the state requirement for registering, so that every 3rd year you have to register with the state and then register, get your license with the city at the same consistent timeline. And then it's less people coming in every year. So you're just coming in once every 3 years to do that. Now, there's no fees in here. We're trying to keep the fees out of the ordinance. So the fee for this would come back later as a policy or a resolution. But we're trying to get all fees out of the ordinance so we don't have to go through an ordinance change municipal code for a fee. That was the recommendation for this whole codification thing. So that'll be a separate step.
That state permit that's issued, Chad, that goes to the person? Or does it go to the premise?
I think that's a premise.
Premise
registration.
livestock ID, so that premise is registered. So then our permit goes to that premise also?
Ours would be for the person.
Ours would
But in the same
That'd be a
state.
person. Is there a conflict there of any kind? I'm not saying there is or isn't. I'm just wondering, is there or isn't? So that premise is registered. The next person comes along, though, they can't use that livestock premise ID.
They would have to get a new one
Yeah, okay. All right.
to their name, I'm assuming.
Yep.
And the next year in that cycle is 2025. So in 2000, so you might only be able to get, if you did it in September of 2025, and it might only good for 3 months, or some might
Okay.
good for a full 3 years. So it'd be 2025, 2028, 2031.
So it's a cycle for everybody. It's not.
Yep, the state, when they adopted it, it was 3 years after that adoption. So if you look at the schematic, it goes 25, 28,
I
2031.
have one. I just know that we get a notice. I did not know it was a cycle like that.
As we mirror them, it'll make it a little easier on us, so they know every 3 years they gotta come to the city and come to the state.
The only thing I still struggle with is that R2 thing. I guess maybe I'm putting too much into it. The D section there, yeah.
Well,
Dave,
point-
what do you think? Leave it, that D up there, the R2, getting permission from the
Oh, this one.
property owner, you're good with, that's just the way it's written, or? You got 2 renters next to each other and one wants chickens, the other one don't.
That's not, we have 2 people renting next to each other. That's not our problem. That's the landlord's problem.
Okay.
Right? I mean, you as a landlord, you're gonna set whether your tenants can have chickens or not. You're gonna set whether you want chickens there. Just like they
Yeah, I
do
guess if
dogs,
they don't
cats,
like it.
fish. I mean.
They don't like it, they can leave, right?
Well,
I mean, really,
any
that's the way.
landlord is gonna wait. Obviously, he's not gonna say, yeah, you can have chickens if he didn't talk to the other tenant. Because he's not gonna want them people moving out
We're dealing with the complaints.
or dealing with the complaints. I mean, it's,
I guess I'm good with it then.
That's the only thing that I think of is that we're trying to avoid conflict. And I mean, it's as
You're never gonna do
simple
that.
as, and I understand that. But I mean, now's our time to do something with this ordinance that maybe we could avoid conflict. We're never going to avoid it completely, but I think this is the time that maybe we can. At least try to.
I think it's written very well.
I have a point of order question. For the agenda, it says review first draft of proposal for chicken ordinance. It doesn't say review for approval. Are we allowed to? We're not allowed to make a motion at this point. We got to bring it back next time, correct?
Talking to Nicole, she mentions recently that as long as it's on the agenda, you can make an action item for it. Unless it specifically says that you're not gonna do something, but it doesn't say after reviewing draft of proposed chicken ordinance, you're reviewing it. You're gonna send it up to the city council at this point for the council to review. And consider.
That's the case, I'll make the motion.
If we were to take action tonight, it would be to create a resolution to recommend approval by the council.
You're just
Is that correct?
recommending that council
Yeah.
consider this
Yeah.
ordinance for approval.
As written or with amended changes that
With
you
the
have
amendment.
redlined?
I'll make the motion that we send this to council for approval on the amended changes that we have in place currently.
Seconded.
All in favor on sending this proposal to council, signify by saying aye.
Aye.
All opposed?
Nay.
No.
Yeah, I'm gonna say no too.
No,
I'd like to stick with what we have here.
Put your hands up high for the ones that said no.
Here, no,
So 4 no, correct?
I saw 3, and then I missed one. Oh, okay.
So Mayor,
So how many ayes do we have?
Ayes,
1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. We only need a majority. We don't need 2/3, right?
nope, this
Right,
is,
okay.
this passes. Yes. So this will be referred to city council for consideration.
All right. Next item is 1500 Hanchke. We did find a document. For the minutes from the November 30th, 2017 Planning Commission meeting, where conditional use was granted for Victory Church at 1500 Hanchke Drive. The only thing that I might add, they're currently have a conditional use approval. They're proposing to change what the approved proposal was. So it's still under the planning commission venue to allow for a conditional use based on the new area that they want to take over. Chad, I think you spoke with our attorney.
So I'll take it from there. So.
Could you share?
So Attorney Segballer and I had to talk about the proposal grant for the church to purchase the property. We referred back to our ordinance 1706. 1706 that talks about conditional use. So this is the process for conditional use, because honestly, this is my first process as an administrator doing this process. So it was good to review it. So in here, there were some questions before. Does this go to council? And what I read right here in the ordinance, approval required uses listed permitted by conditional grant or uses determined by planning commission. So number one, I see here that this is not going to council per se, this is going to planning commission. This is just the power delegated to the council. But the other part of this is the process that the planning commission is supposed to review in a conditional use request. There's some standards here. Principal criteria guiding the planning commission in reaching this decision in each case upon petitions for conditional use grants shall be whether in the commission's opinion implemented in the city plan be advised and whether the spirit of this ordinance will be upheld, including those factors given in section 17061 introduction above. More specifically, the commission shall not approve an application in said condition unless shall first find. So these are the criteria you are supposed to evaluate in the request. The attorney and I kind of went through these 4 criteria as of now, and you can read through them. I mean, but we're not finding anything in these 4 criteria that cause a red flag that you would not grant this particular request. You know, in the sense that, you know, as an establishment maintains or operation, the conditional use will not be detrimental or endanger public health, safety, morale, comfort, and general welfare. We're not seeing that this conditional grant has any safety or issues endangering the public. The conditional grant use will not be injurious to the use and enjoyment of other property in the immediate vicinity for the proposed already permitted, nor noticeable diminish and impair property values or aesthetics within the neighborhood. We didn't find that in this particular case. You know, there's congregation and people that attend this facility during events. You know, there's not really a change of people congregating to a dance hall compared to congregating to a church. You still have the same traffic patterns and things like that. So we didn't find that was a red flag in this scenario. You know, the facility is already there. As long as there's nothing majorly changed with the exterior, with that, with the aesthetics on the outside, create property value changes to the neighbors. You know, we're not seeing, unless there's something that we're not understanding at this point in time for how the property's going to change, we're not seeing that this is an issue. The establishment of the conditional use will not impede the normal and orderly development and improvement of the surrounding property uses permitted in the district. We're not seeing any red flags there. That adequate utilities, access roads, street access does not impede public traffic flow, drainage, or other necessary facilities have been or being provided. Again, these are the 4 criteria in the ordinance that the planning commission is supposed to look at when reviewing this scenario. Procedure, one of the things that has to be done yet, the commission has to have a public hearing. So we need to, and we are in the process of putting out the required notices for a public hearing for this. And this, I believe, is the same scenario that the church had to go through last time, because it talks about a public hearing in the minutes from 2017. So the planning commission is going to have a public hearing at the next meeting on this situation. I've asked Attorney Stegbauer to be present, so if there's any questions on that, maybe there's something that someone from the public brings up at the meeting, some new information that you guys consider at the point in time. So be it. But at this point in time, we're not, you can't even make a recommendation yet because you have to have a public hearing. So we're going to do that at the next meeting. And we foresee you guys making a decision one way or the other at that next meeting after the public hearing. Any questions with that?
So the notice will be in time for the September 28th meeting to have a public hearing on the matter. Also, the additional space that they're looking to take over, it basically mirrors what they're doing now. So those 4 criteria, you still wouldn't be in violation of any of those. So all we can do is table this to the September meeting.
In item 2 up there, the immediate vicinity, what do they call the immediate vicinity? What's that considered?
Mayor, or
Within 100 feet, 500 feet?
that would probably be for our attorney to determine. Yeah, normally you don't like ambiguous language like that in an ordinance, but that's what we currently have. So
What was the zoning public hearing notice? We put out 100 feet around the property?
yeah, and we'll send notice to all the property owners within 100
So
feet.
that might be your vicinity, because in the zoning code, we have to notify by letter property owners 100 feet around it. So
From any property line.
Property owner from the property line, 100. So, and then it says the establishment, maintenance, or operation of conditional use will not be detrimental or endanger the public health, safety, and morals. What do they consider of detrimental? What would that be? Because my determination is we've got that banquet hall there and we have hotels, restaurants, even Sleepy Creek out there, I'm sure they all benefit from that banquet hall. And if we take that banquet hall away, I mean, we had somebody bring a hotel here, which came first, kind of like the chicken and egg. Did the banquet hall come first? I think it did. And the hotel probably came shortly after that because, hey, that's a great spot to build it. We already had another hotel. They still saw a need that we could bring one in there. I don't think we're doing a service to the community. We got to look at the community, not just an individual entity of what we're doing. And I do not think it's in the best interest to have that completely turned into a church. If they want to lease out there and, you know, the banquet hall continues to run, but the other way around of them eventually owning the whole building, I'm sorry, I just don't feel it's the right thing to do.
I would recommend that you bring those questions next month when you see the attorneys here, so we can have some legal perspective to all of those and any other questions
Okay.
that you may have.
I mean, in my opinion regarding that, that property could be sold to anyone and they could turn around and shut it down as banquet hall completely. They could turn it into a different business. So,
Not without our approval. That's what the point is here, is our approval.
As long as it.
well, the condition, the provisional is for the nonprofit aspect of it. But if I decided I wanted to buy that building and turn it into something other than a restaurant bar, I have the right to turn it into something other than a restaurant bar.
Providing that the use that you're proposing.
Falls within the zoning,
Yes, is by grant, not by conditional. Grant. Yes.
correct?
Right, or condition.
And I'm pretty sure that the zoning out there is pretty liberal business wise. I looked it up in our planning. In that huge document that we just paid a bunch of money for.
Can I ask a question? I'm confused. What is the reason to have the public hearing on the condition, since the conditional use has already been approved prior?
Because you're changing the use. You're talking about taking over more space and purchasing those. Approval was granted, it was based on the information we had at that time. So it's changing slightly, but it's changing, so it has to go back through this group for approval.
So clarifying on that, just for my understanding and recapping my understanding, I guess. So they were given a provisional for a portion of the building and now we're looking at a provisional for the entirety of the building.
So
And that's why it has to go back before public hearing.
So November 2017, the conditional grant was granted to Victory Church based on what was proposed at that time. I specifically asked the attorney this question because it was given at one point in time. Does that just carry over, you know, for expansion and do other things? In the ordinance, it talks about if there's modifications or expansion of conditional use operations or activities, then yes, it has to come back to the planning commission for a new conditional grant. There might be a different situation, and I can't even think of something right now that a conditional grant for something else, and they just really expand to be way different. You know, that conditional grant at the time was for what was proposed at that point in time.
What is the zoning out there right now from our comprehensive plan that we just approved? What is the zoning out there now?
Zoning or comprehensive plan?
Or
Two
what?
different things.
Okay, so
The zoning,
Wasn't that, and
zoning is manufacturing park.
Yeah.
Okay.
Which, if you look in the ordinance, manufacturing park allows a bunch of activities in the B2 district. They kind of line up with each
Okay.
other.
Yep.
Which one of the things are religious activities are allowed by conditional grant.
Okay.
So
and then the comprehensive plan,
don't have that at my fingertips.
Yeah. That might take a minute.
It's a big document.
It is. Remember, it was chapter 7 or something.
Yeah.
Land use. So existing land use. This one's right here, right? Which the red. So red is just commercial. So the existing land use is commercial. Future land use would stay commercial. I believe.
I didn't think we changed that one.
Yeah.
Commercial, so it's sort of the land use and comprehensive plan, existing and future land use is determined to be commercial.
Then keep in mind, when we do redo our zoning ordinance, we can address all this stuff when we do that. So if we decide we don't want to allow them in certain districts, we'll have to have them make allowance to allow them, but in particular districts, so we can determine which districts. We'll work through all that.
But at this point, I mean, I don't know if we can answer all the questions, but if you do have questions, especially legal ones, why don't you just shoot them to Dave in the meantime? He can get those to the city attorney so that the attorney has some thought process going into our next meeting, so that, you know, not just throw them on the spot with things. That we can talk about that. But yes, we're gonna have to have a public hearing.
Okay, so the way I'm understanding it as of today, in theory, Victory Church could buy the building, occupy the amount of space that currently they are, and have the conditional use permit for that, and then could do whatever else they would want to do with the building as long as it's under the commercial use.
If you buy the building, is that changing what the original plan was?
So in your scenario, you're saying if the church purchases the building and all the uses stay as is for the time being today, would that restrict you from purchasing the building?
No, would that guarantee us the conditional use?
Well, that wouldn't guarantee the conditional use.
We would still have to reapply because of the building.
If you want to expand.
No, I'm talking staying in the same spot we're at. Ownership change of the building.
Does ownership change the conditional use that they've already been granted? Is what you're asking,
Yes.
correct?
Yes.
I'd rather the attorney answer that, to be honest.
Until the next one.
Well, I
And
think
and then
the-
we would be able to do like you had indicated, it's commercial use. We could rent that out to if for any reason, any type of commercial business.
So I'll get back to how I stated that before. Hypothetically, the church would purchase. Nothing would change for the time being of the existing activities. Is that correct?
Yes.
I want to get legal opinion because I don't want to say I'm an attorney,
Yeah.
but
I think you can get that legal opinion and answer them on
Yes.
that question before our next meeting, so they have an answer
yes.
next week.
Correct. Correct. Yes. If someone wants to come and give me contact information before you leave, I'd appreciate that. Public hearing would be at the next meeting. Right now it'd be at the regular planning commission because we got to do a bunch of different notices required by law, the class 2 notices. So we got to put in the paper a couple times. The next regular one would be on the 28th.
You email that to us, that particular. You got right there.
The document?
Yeah.
The zoning code that's on the website. I can give you the link.
Hey, that's something, just send it to me.
Yeah, I can give you the link to your chapter. So if anybody wants to look at it,
Comprehensive plan. how it-
chapter 17 of the zoning code, that's where, or chapter 17 of the municipal code is where the zoning ordinances are at.
I got something to say. I thought last month at that meeting that I rewatched it and I thought it looked silly. To be honest with you, I thought we did not have the information we needed to talk about that. And I was there when Missy found that information of that conditional use. She found that in probably about 25 seconds. So was that something like going forward that we can have all that information going forward?
I think it was brought up at the meeting.
If there was a conditional use there?
Correct. No, nobody knew at the
Yeah.
meeting.
Yes, that was talked about. Nobody knew right away. That wasn't at the meeting. That was beforehand because the church didn't know, you didn't know, nobody knew.
Correct.
And she found it in literally 25 seconds when I was standing there. So, I mean, unless there's something where I can do as a member, like, can I look at that stuff? Where she found that? I guess I don't know. She found it under the minutes. But is that where you would look?
All
As
the
a-
minutes are online.
That's all.
They're all-
Right, right. But is that the place to look?
She's gonna find it a lot easier doing a search internally on servers. You're not gonna be able to.
You can't do
search
that
on our
search.
servers.
This is what I'm saying. So I can't do that as a member. So I gotta rely on somebody else doing that before we get here.
You can do it. It's just gonna take you longer.
You would have to look at every single minutes one by one.
Right.
I tried and I gave up.
See,
I
what
couldn't
this
find it.
this
I
is
just
what my
gave up.
point is. My point is, she found it in 15 seconds. I think that information should have been at that last meeting. And then even now, you find there's under the rules and ordinances of what we got, this is what you gotta do. I mean, that probably should have been at the last meeting. And maybe that's my job to look into that stuff also being on the planning commission, but I just felt like we were ill prepared, all of us. So maybe just going forward, just a heads up, like, I don't know. Just had to say my 2 cents and that was it.
Well, this has got to come up for a public hearing, right?
Yep.
Yes.
Okay. I mean, we can sit here all night, discuss this and that, so I think we should wait till our public hearing at the end of the month and move on to the rest of the agenda.
Do we need a motion for the public hearing? Or is that already going to happen?
It's already,
Okay.
it's already in motion. So we'll have that. It'll be ready for next meeting. So the only thing I have for upcoming agenda that I know of at this point is the site plan proposal for the Festival Foods Edition. We worked through some easement issues ongoing, and we should have those buttoned up in a site plan ready for the next meeting for possible approval for the addition over there. So that's all I have.
I have a question regarding fencing again.
Okay.
So we had 321 North Shawano over here apply for their fencing, and that died. But then just down the road, 421 has put up a fence up to the road, the 4-foot one, where he had those posts in before that were gonna be 6 foot or 8 foot or whatever they were. And I don't remember this group approving that fencing. And that's a picket fence. It's a solid picket fence, and we weren't allowing his neighbor just a few houses down, a block down, to have
I'm
one.
not sure what house it is. As they come to me, I deal with them. So
Well,
Right
that's
down
what
the
she's
road.
doing right now is coming to you because he did not. He's been pretty much sandbagging on it for a year. Put up the post, let it wait. Put up a couple fence pieces, let it wait, and now it's a full fence.
Mhm. I just drove by it the other day and saw,
It's one back. by
if you
Back
could
Ridge
email
over
me
there.
that stuff, so I
No.
can,
Tom
yeah,
Christian.
I'm not sure what address.
Tom
it is.
Christian was the one who wanted one and we didn't approve it. It died. His neighbor down the road at 421,
It's a white fence. isn't
it's
it?
a white fence, that was the one that was putting up a fence at the same time. And you had gone and talked to him,
And he
was my
still
understanding, and he stopped.
Yeah.
Now the fence is up.
He added on.
Yep, it's up.
Finished it.
So he would be in violation of our ordinance.
Correct.
So, and that was my question. Unless I missed it, it didn't get approved.
It wasn't on the agenda, so if it's there, it's in violation of our ordinance. So I can deal with him.
Just one quick thing, number 6 there. I looked up on Wapaka County, that extra squiggly line shouldn't be there, because that property owner on the south side, it's already square.
This one's
That
already,
black line is already squared according to Wapaka County here. That little squiggly line should.
They might have that on there showing that it was that way at one point, and they changed it. So like
Well,
I
I just
said,
wanted to ease everybody's mind that we were only,
I did
it's
not-
already square on this side, that side is the one they're talking about.
that definitely wasn't part of the discussion I had with them, so I would agree with that. That's all I have.
Okay, seeing how there's nothing else on the agenda. Next meeting will be September 28th, 5:15. Now I need a motion
I'll make a motion to adjourn.
to adjourn.
I'll second it.
All in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
All opposed.